7 baby food brands sold as organic, premium, or specifically designed for infant safety have failed independent heavy metal testing. One of them registered 641 parts per billion of lead in finished product, enough that if it were found at those levels in drinking water, the municipal supply would be shut down. That brand passed FDA compliance. It's still on shelves. Every single brand on this list will be named, ranked from concerning to catastrophic. None of them technically broke the law, and by the end, you'll know exactly why that sentence isn't reassuring and exactly what to do about the products already in your pantry before naming a single brand. The framework. Every product in this video technically meets current FDA guidelines for heavy metals in baby food. That sounds reassuring until you understand what those guidelines actually are. The FDA's limits for lead and arsenic in infant food are voluntary. They weren't even finalized until 2025 under the Closer to Zero initiative. They're set 3 to 5 times higher than European Union limits for the exact same products. Compliance with federal guidance doesn't mean a food is safe. It means the food isn't loud enough about being unsafe to be illegal. And the core issue isn't the specific limit. Heavy metals, lead, arsenic, cadmium, mercury, are elemental. They're pulled from the soil through a plant's roots. The USDA organic certification regulates pesticide application. It has no authority over what a carrot absorbs from the dirt it grew in. An organic carrot grown in lead-contaminated soil is a lead-contaminated organic carrot, and the certification seal on the jar cannot change that. What this list documents isn't illegal behavior. It's the gap between what these brands promised and what independent laboratories, including Healthy Babies' Bright Futures, Consumer Reports, and the 2021 Congressional Subcommittee on Economic and Consumer Policy, found inside the package. Number 7. Parents' Choice Organic. Walmart's Parents' Choice Organic line captured roughly 30% of the American baby food market, the way Walmart captures every market, by undercutting everyone on price while claiming parity on quality. The organic certification on the jar is genuine, so is the price advantage. What isn't advertised is how those two things coexist. For 6 years, Walmart maintained an internal safety ceiling of 23 parts per billion for inorganic arsenic in its baby foods. In 2018, without public announcement and without scientific justification, Walmart quadrupled that limit to 100 parts per billion. Federal investigators reviewing the change called it a giant step backwards in consumer protection. In October 2021, Maple Island, with a company that manufactures Parents' Choice cereal for Walmart, recalled 3 lots of organic rice baby cereal for dangerously elevated inorganic arsenic. Walmart conducts no internal testing of its finished baby foods. The company relies entirely on supplier self-certification, which is exactly what it sounds like. The supplier tells Walmart the food is safe. Walmart stocks the shelves. Number 6. O Organics and Simple Truth Organic. 29.3 parts per billion of lead. That's what Kroger's Simple Truth Organic whole carrots registered in Consumer Reports testing. O Organics puffs in purple carrot and blueberry tested at 22.8. To ground those numbers in pediatric context, independent toxicologists classify any lead level in infant food above 17 parts per billion as highly dangerous. A separate class action lawsuit against Simple Truth Organic teething wafers alleged contamination with all 4 target metals: arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury, in a single product designed to be gnawed on by a teething infant for an hour at a time. The reason this happens to private label store brands is structural. Safeway, Albertsons, and Kroger don't grow the food. They don't manufacture it. They contract with whoever offered the lowest acceptable bid that quarter, and the winning supplier rotates. The grocery chain's oversight of agricultural sourcing is functionally zero. What was in the jar last year is not necessarily what's in the jar this year. Nobody with the retailer's logo on their business card is watching the soil. Number 5. PUCCO, Plum Organics. When Congress subpoenaed internal testing data from major baby food manufacturers in early 2021, Plum Organics, then owned by Campbell Soup Company, refused to comply. When the subcommittee eventually compelled production of documents, Plum handed over a spreadsheet with a single column marked Meets Criteria. Every product checked off as fine. For mercury specifically, buried in the fine print, Plum had noted there was no specific threshold established internally. In plain language, every product met criteria that didn't exist. The data that did emerge was brutal. Between 2017 and 2019, 100% of Plum's Super Puff rice-based snacks tested above 200 parts per billion for total arsenic. The line's average was 233 parts per billion. Across Plum's broader portfolio, 54.5% of tested products exceeded 5 parts per billion of lead. Their Just Sweet Potato Stage 1 puree, a food designed for 4-month-old babies beginning solids, registered 18.2 parts per billion of lead in subsequent Consumer Reports testing. The proposed FDA limit for purees is 10. To their credit, Plum is one of the few brands that voluntarily published 2024 testing results ahead of California's transparency law taking effect. Reform is possible. The open question is, how many pouches shipped in the years before it started? Number 4. Biokinetics, makers of Allsprouts, 353 parts per billion. That's the total arsenic concentration found in Biokinetics brown rice sprouted baby cereal in laboratory testing by Brooks Applied Labs using inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry, the gold standard method for detecting trace metals. 144 parts per billion of that was the inorganic, carcinogenic form. The same sample also contained 31.7 parts per billion of cadmium and measurable mercury, not contamination with one metal. 4. Biokinetics targets a specific parent, the one who has already rejected Gerber, already rejected Walmart, already paid extra for small batch, sprouted living grain, cereals sold through natural food retailers and direct-to-consumer websites. The entire marketing premise is that niche processing, sprouting, minimal handling, artisanal scale, equals safety. The product sits at the top of the organic hierarchy, and it costs accordingly. Here's what that premium doesn't buy. Rice plants biologically absorb arsenic from flooded soil through the same mechanism, regardless of whether they're commercial or heirloom, conventional or organic, milled industrially or sprouted in small batches. Arsenic concentrates in the bran layer, which organic and sprouted brown rice products specifically preserve to retain fiber and B vitamins. The premium processing doesn't remove the arsenic from the grain. It packages it alongside the nutrients and calls the combination healthier. Parents paid more for this product specifically to escape what the mass-market brands were doing. What they got was a concentrated version of the same problem, delivered in a prettier package. Number 3, Earth's Best Organic. Earth's Best, the Hain Celestial brand, has been the default organic alternative for American parents for more than 30 years. The tagline, "Nurturing baby the purest way," isn't marketing fluff. It's a promise repeated on every package. Decades of parents paid a premium, believing that promise was verified. It wasn't verified. It was estimated. Earth's Best, like most of its competitors, relied on ingredient-only testing. The company would sample a batch of raw rice flour, a batch of apple concentrate, a batch of vitamin premix, and mathematically estimate the heavy metal content of the final blended product based on the recipe formulation. Congressional investigators found this methodology underestimated actual toxicity in the finished jar by margins ranging from 28 to 93%, 100% of the time. What the ingredient testing did reveal, before the math smoothed it over, was damning enough. Earth's Best sourced raw ingredients containing up to 352 parts per billion of lead. 88 individual ingredients tested over 20 parts per billion for lead. 6 tested over 200. 102 separate. Ingredients exceeded 20 parts per billion for cadmium. The internal documents Congress obtained included a subpoenaed PowerPoint presentation identifying the primary source of much of the arsenic contamination. It wasn't the rice. It was the vitamin and mineral premix, the supplement added to fortify the nutritional profile. The ingredient parents assumed made the product healthier. The slide recommended the company explore alternatives, a recommendation that stayed inside company walls while the product continued shipping and the purest way marketing continued running. Number 2, Happy Baby, made by Nurture, Inc. Most of the brands on this list can claim ignorance as a defense. They tested the wrong things. They trusted bad suppliers. They didn't know. Nurture, Inc., the company behind Happy Baby and Happy Family Organics, cannot claim that defense. Nurture actually tested its finished products. This is the detail that reframes everything. When Congress examined the data, Nurture was the only responding manufacturer that even tested for mercury. They knew what was in the food, and their own laboratory results showed finished products containing up to 180 parts per billion of inorganic arsenic, up to 641 parts per billion of lead, and measurable mercury and cadmium across the portfolio. That's the 641 number from the opening of this video. It came from this brand. Nurture's internal safety ceiling for rice cereal was officially set at 115 parts per billion of inorganic arsenic, deliberately higher than the FDA's own 100 parts per billion guidance. More than a quarter of their finished products exceeded 100 parts per billion for inorganic arsenic. Nearly 1 in 5 exceeded 10 parts per billion of lead. 65% exceeded 5 parts per billion of cadmium. Specific products named in subsequent tort litigation included the organic teether sweet potato and banana, measured at 95 parts per billion arsenic, a product designed to sit in an infant's mouth for an hour at a time. They ran the tests. They saw the results. They shipped the product. That is not a compliance failure. That is a decision. And the brand positioning, the ethical organic choice, the one parents specifically select because the marketing emphasizes transparency and nutritional superiority, only amplifies what was being traded away. A parent paying extra for Happy Baby Puffs because the label promises something better was paying for a promise the company's own laboratory had already falsified before the product left the warehouse. Number 1, Sprout Organic. The number 1 position on this list isn't about the worst historical numbers. Plenty of brands competed for that. The number 1 position is about the most recent failure and what it proves about the industry right now, not 5 years ago. In September 2025, Sprout Foods issued a voluntary recall for its sweet potato, apple, and spinach pureed pouches across 28 states. Lot codes 4212, 4213, 4282, and 4310. The reason cited was elevated lead concentrations discovered during routine state-level sampling. This isn't archival data from the 2021 congressional reckoning. This is a product that was on store shelves recently, being spoon-fed to infants by parents following pediatrician guidance, until a state inspector happened to pull a sample. The recall shouldn't have surprised anyone. When Congress first requested testing protocols from Sprout in 2021, the company refused to cooperate. When eventually compelled to disclose, Sprout admitted something extraordinary. It did not test its finished products. It did not require batch-by-batch testing of raw ingredients. It relied on its third-party suppliers to run heavy metal testing once per calendar year. One test. 12 months of production based on a single snapshot of a single shipment. Congressional staff characterized Sprout's protocol as the most reckless in the industry. Independent testing in the years since confirmed the consequences. Sprout's organic quinoa puffs, marketed explicitly as a rice-free alternative to the arsenic problem, tested at 107 parts per billion of total arsenic and 39.3 parts per billion of lead. The rice-free reformulation. Contamination was never just about rice. It was about a supply chain nobody was meaningfully monitoring. A parent reaching for Sprout today isn't dealing with a legacy problem that has been corrected. They're buying from a company whose most recent public data point is a multi-state lead recall. The systems that produced the 2021 failures appear to still be producing failures. The only genuine difference is that in a post-California AB 899 world of mandatory public testing disclosure, someone is occasionally there to catch it. Not always, not quickly, and not before it reaches the baby. No brand is going to be perfectly clean. This isn't a problem that brand loyalty solves. It's a problem that dietary strategy solves, and the difference between the two approaches is measured in orders of magnitude, not single digits. The largest single change any parent can make is swapping rice cereal for oatmeal. Rice absorbs inorganic arsenic from flooded soil at roughly 10 times the rate of oats, barley, or multigrain, and that substitution alone reduces heavy metal residue in that feeding category by 84%. Nothing else in infant nutrition has that kind of measured impact from a single swap. The same logic applies to teething products. Rice rusks and rice puffs concentrate arsenic through the dehydration process that makes them shelf-stable, while frozen bananas, chilled cucumber spears, and silicone teethers cut exposure by over 90% while costing almost nothing. Root vegetables need to be rotated, not eliminated. Sweet potatoes, carrots, and beets are genuinely nutritious, and they're also heavy metal accumulators, not because the farmer is careless, but because the root draws lead and cadmium directly from the soil it grows in. Keep feeding them. Just don't make them the daily staple. Rotate with squash, peas, apples, avocado, and banana, and the cumulative burden drops dramatically. For families where budget is the primary constraint, the best news in this entire video is that fresh whole foods are almost always cleaner than processed pouches. A mashed banana isn't a premium product. It costs less than the organic pouch it replaces, and it has effectively no heavy metal problem because it grew on a tree and was never milled, dehydrated, blended, or fortified with a contaminated vitamin premix. For parents who do want pouches, and that convenience is a real need, not a failing, Once Upon a Farm and Little Spoon have consistently tested at the cleanest end of independent laboratory data. Both align their internal limits with European Union standards rather than looser FDA ones. Both publish their testing results publicly instead of burying them behind lot number lookup tools. That isn't marketing. That's the only reliable signal left in this market. The question isn't whether to feel guilty about the pouches already in the pantry. The question is, what changes tomorrow? A different cereal, a swapped-out teether, a rotation instead of a routine. These are small decisions that compound over the first 1,000 days, the developmental window that matters most. Which brand on this list surprised you most? And which baby product category do you want investigated next? Leave it in the comments. The next video starts where the most asked question lands.